And reset. You can tell why it took me for God. I gotta reset my clock. I set my clock and you said set your clock. Here we go. Prime example. Don't be discouraged, anybody. I just have to reset my clock. ReCoded. Welcome back to the ReCoded podcast. We're so excited to have you here as always. And I'm here with Stacia, Hannah, and myself, Sarah. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. This week, yeah. God. This week's episode is a doozy. It's the Judgement Diet. Today is going to hopefully take you in a bit of a new direction. I know when I've done this, it's always been a bit of a challenge, and it's always been for the better. So I will hand it over to Hannah and let you take it from there.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Oh, so it's amazing. The other day I was scrolling, looking for something, and I start scrolling because, I get squirrel.
It happens.
And those reels that really grab you, there was this girl and I didn't pay attention. I don't know if it's ever happened to you that you hear something and it stays with you. And the more you think about it, the angrier you get. It's like, so I heard this thing and I was like, oh my God, that is such a lie. That is not true, not necessarily true. And so this morning, I was like getting more and more and more upset. And and I heard this about 2 weeks ago. So it's been there like a little worm that just went in, and it's like, still like periodically I think about it and I'd be like, no, don't, just ignore it. It's so stupid. It's not, why are you paying mind to that? Right. And so I started thinking about how we have that tendency and that thing of being human that sends us into judging people so harshly for what they've done, for what they haven't done, for how they look, for how they just every aspect of people gets judged in a way that sometimes is very detrimental, not only to the person that's being judged, but to the person judging. Right? And eventually I came around to my conclusion, which was, that was just a reminder of who I am not. It is a reminder of all the work that I've done, all the hours that I've put in research and in living through things, in experiencing my own experience. But it's that idea. So we have beliefs that shape our choices, that shape our ideas of others, that may not necessarily be the most helpful in our life. And it just brought me back to, oh my gosh, we have to talk about the Judgement Diet because it is such a life-changing event. And it takes courage to embark on this because it sounds very easy, but if we become very let's say observant, and if we become very present in our lives at every step of the way, we're going to be able to spot where we go into judgment very, very quickly. We judge ourselves the harshest. We judge others. And it is like a big deal when we train our minds to stop it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's nodding my head. Yes. And honestly, you don't realize how often you do it. until you're like, let me go on a diet, right? Like, it's just like any diet. You notice how many times you eat chocolate or cookies in a day, mindlessly doing it. And then you're like, oh, wait, I can't eat this. Whenever I've done the Judgment Diet, it's like, it's true though. It's like whenever I've done the Judgment Diet, I'm like,
I'm not supposed to eat this many cookies. Wait, I'm not supposed to be eating cookies at all.
yes. Yeah. No. But the other thing with, and I'm sure you'll get into this with like how it works, but for me, because every time if you started to judge yourself or others, you have to reset, right? So we would do it for we started with 48 hours. We did
we did 36 hours.
36
we calculated
hours.
That it was like 3 days of 12 hours, right?
Yeah. And I never made it through I kept having to reset because I realized, man, I would do it so often. And I used to be really bad for judging myself and do it like, oh, why did I do that? That was stupid. I'm like, man, if you if I sat there and like wrote down everything, if you had us write down everything that we were judging, oh my gosh. Like, and it's like, oh, then you wonder why your life looks a certain way or why you're calling certain things into your life or pushing certain things away if you're constantly judging. When we're being judged or judging others, like we don't realize that has such a big impact, whether it's ourselves, whether it's somebody else. And I mean, often when we're judging other people, we're maybe not telling them, maybe we're talking to other people, but then that's impacting that person because it's like now you're breeding this negative environment between each other. I find it very interesting that going on a judgment diet is so hard because that's how often we actually judge.
And what I noticed the most is how much I judged myself. And I started becoming hyper aware of all of the times during the day where I was judging me. And then I was probably projecting this judgment out into others because, it was that desire I had to be right or for things to be just exactly perfect. And then I could just, start picking apart like, well, I'm not doing this. Oh, well, look, she's not doing this or he's not doing this.
Divert the attention.
yes. It was just really, I had the hardest time actually completing the Judgment Diet. And once I finally made it through, it's like I became really aware. I came around with this new awareness of, before I even had the thought. It's like, don't do it.
Yes.
Don't catch yourself and don't do it.
Stop it.
Right? But then it helped me to really look at things from like a different perspective. That I think that really helped me really open up that avenue. Yes. Whereas I always had, my little blinders, my little world blinders of this is how the world should be so perfect and wonderful. And now I'm like, wait a minute, you're looking at it from over here and you're looking at it from over here. And it's like all of a sudden you're starting to see all of these different possibilities and reasonings as to why people think the way that they do. And I think it allowed me to become more empathetic and more compassionate for people, who don't have the same, we're not sharing the same background. And so it really catapulted quite a few avenues in my life when I finally was able to complete this. And then I was finally to let go of a lot of that judgment I had against myself, kind of let everything else fall with it.
Yes. Now there's there's two things that I want to make sure that I address. One is that I always say that if a friend, a stranger, somebody other than ourselves would speak to us the way we speak to us, we would kick their butt and never speak to them again. They would be thrown out to the curb faster than I can say boomerang.
Yes.
And it's like they would not be coming back like a boomerang. They'd be like, it's like, what's the difference between a boomerang and a stick, right? It's like Sick doesn't come back. So that's one thing. The other thing I want to make sure that we address is the fact that we are human antennas. And we're continuously picking up from the ether a bunch of information that we don't even know that we're picking up. And 90% of what we're thinking is not even ours, it's stuff that we're picking up.
Yeah.
I teach a speed reading class, and then I talk about place setting. The fork has a position, the knife has a position, the spoon has a position, right? And most of us learn etiquette, most of us in the Western world. And God forbid you're in a restaurant and start eating your steak with your salad fork. It's like, oh, that person, people will go into judgment immediately. Immediately will go into, oh, that person has no manners, has not been educated correctly because they're eating the wrong way.
Oh my
So
God.
how many, to our listeners and viewers, how many things do you do that you don't even question? And that's when I talk about all the things that we hold on, that we think are right and correct in our lives, how much they hold us back.
So the good thing that comes from it is then you're aware and you're like, oh, okay, I can decide, do I want to keep this or do I want to let this go and not be so judgmental? Because what I wanted to jump into is my segment. It is so freeing when, like, a liberation, when you can let go of that judgment. And that's when the success starts to come and the growth in your business starts to come, because you've unchanged yourself from that. I think, Hannah will remember, back one of the first masterminds I was ever in with a coach, it got to a point where there was a lot of judgment and a lot of people, like, to me, when I hear judgment, I think jealousy. Like, that's my experience with it. I feel like it's going in that direction. If people are judging people, it's because they're doing better. They have something you want, or you're not happy with the way your life is going. So, in the coaching world, in the business world, sometimes people will get more focused on, oh, that person's doing this. Oh, that person's making a 10K month. Why am I not? What's so great about them? What do they have that I don't have? And then that's when the spiraling starts coming in. What helped me was when I looked at that more as like, damn, look what they're doing. Wow, what is special about them? The same words, but just reframing that language and how I said it. Like, what is it about them? Oh, guess what? They're really owning who they are and being authentic and their zone of genius. And we're going to have an episode specifically about that and how you can do it. But for today's episode, I just want to really encourage you. If you're in that mode and you're listening, you're like, oh yeah, that's been me. I've been too focused on what everyone else is doing and not sitting my ass down and getting my own shit done because I'm worried about what Sally's doing, Janie's doing, whatever else. And sit down and look at your own self. And if it comes down to, you know what, I have some work to do. Me last year, I took like, it was almost 5 months where I just worked on myself. I was working with Hannah and stuff. We did like deep work. That changed my life. And I was working with other coaches and I worked on healing because I realized I got into a place where that could have went really sour. That could have went really bad. And after I did that, it was so freeing. Like the focus on my business became so much more authentic. It became more effortless. The things that I was putting out last summer, I was like, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to speak it and say it like it is. And Hannah, you remember I did like the coconut effect. And I was like, you know what? I'm done with the pineapples. I love pineapples, but I'm a coconut. And I just put a whole new spin on it. And I had so much fun with it. And it led to so much success. And from there, it just let me be free with my ideas and just do things my way where I came up with a whole like experience for people to like, this is how you can do this too. This is what I did. And it took me time and I took months. I didn't rush into it. I found before I was really rushing into the next thing, got to put out the next offer. And it wasn't always landing until I really sat with myself and looked at, am I comparing myself to other people? Am I getting into that judgment? And am I judging myself? And fuck yes to all three of those I was. But then I just took a step back and I did it. And like we said, it wasn't easy and we avoided it at times. Came back to it, did the work. So you might be at the spot where you're like, oh, I have to do the healing. Or you might be ready to just be like, okay, you know what? I'm done with this. I'm putting on my big girl pants. I'm done focusing on whatever everyone else is doing and judging and comparing, and just jump right into what you love to do in your business. And honestly, you're going to feel like the chains have been released and you can just be completely free. And with that, you can't be afraid of like what you can be afraid, but you got to do it anyway. You got to be courageous about going for it anyway and not judging yourself if it doesn't land with your audience. If you get the haters, right, Hannah? If you find like, oh man, I thought this thing was going to do really well and didn't, like, don't let that be the spot for you to judge yourself and think, oh man, I suck, or I guess I'm not meant for this. It's like, no, what can I do differently? And that's something I always tell my clients is at the end of a launch, at the end of a program, whatever you're hosting, look back, what went well, what didn't, and what can I do differently next time to be more successful? Because even if you think you had the best launch ever and wow, this was so successful, guarantee you there's always something that you can improve. So that is my advice to all the listeners.
That is wonderful advice. So Stacia, would you like to tell us how the week is looking and how it all
gels
is connected?
Yes. So this is a perfect episode for the astrology that we're coming into, or actually we've actually started tapping into it already, because we've got that wounded healer Chiron, you know, it's gone retrograde, and it's things coming up that maybe we hadn't thought about, maybe we've never thought about, that we need to heal. And at the end of the week, last week, I think it was on Friday the 28th, you know, Mercury went into Virgo, which brought out this perfectionism syndromes and analysis paralysis because we're overthinking everything. And so now this week is presenting us with a full moon in Aquarius. So Tuesday, August 1st. So by the time this airs, it's going to be the day after the full moon in Aquarius. And the Aquarius sign, it's an air sign. They're the think outside the box. They're very idealistic. They're creative. They're kind of the rebels. They're also very misunderstood because they can feel a little complicated, and because they feel a lot or they feel nothing. I have an Aquarius moon, so I'm feeling this already. I'm feeling this energy that it's bringing. So anytime we have a full moon, you know, we have this opportunity to shine light on things that, you know, maybe we hadn't wanted to look at, or maybe things that we didn't know we needed to look at, and it's really helping us to forgive and release situations, whether that's of ourselves or another person or a situation that's come up, that we can then move forward more aligned with, you know, who we are at a soul level. So with this Aquarius sign, I love that Sarah brought up the zone of genius, because, you know, Aquarius energy is all about finding your inner genius. It's about this uniqueness that we hold. And you know, that can get very complicated because you're out in this world that's full of judgment. And so therefore, we don't tap into our full potentials of who we could actually become, because we're fearful of what people will think of us, or, you know, what might happen if we actually go for that dream that we're desiring. So it's just a really great energy to maybe hang out with friends, to do volunteer work, something that's going to help you to create a difference out in your neck of the woods, and to really take the time to Hannah was the one that taught me this, that a moon cycle, you go from a new moon, which the Aquarian moon in January 21st, whatever things were coming up for us then, to really reflect on things that have happened since, as far as our sense of belonging and our community. Aquarius is kind of this, it kind of represents humanity, as so it's individualized, but it's also everyone. And Aquarians are ruled, the planet Saturn and Uranus rule Aquarius. And Saturn is all about lessons, and Uranus is all about change. So it's like it becomes really complicated when you throw it all together. So just really thinking about what has happened since January, really spotlighting your social environment, and really our individual freedoms, I guess, is a good way to put that. So, if there's anything that you need to, you want to forgive, is there something you want to forgive yourself? This is a really good energy this week. It doesn't have to be right on the full moon. We have this energy available to us for a little while when it comes in, but really thinking about any lessons that may have come up recently that you can, instead of judging, you can really dive into, what did I learn from this? And, what good can I get out of this? And also, of course, what are you grateful for? Those are really some good themes to really tap into while we have this full moon energy. And, just allowing yourself to feel your truth, the truth of who you are, that maybe you're not showing people. This is also our second super moon of the year. That's just when the moon is like closer to the earth than it normally is. We have like 4 to 6 of those a year. So it is thought that makes things a little more intense, like that light might just come shining on you a little more brightly. But instead of internalizing this as, this judgment of self, really allowing yourself to work through this energy as like, what am I learning here? What is this lesson? Is there a pattern that I'm noticing? Really just thinking of things in a different perspective, instead of labeling them maybe how you've always done it before, would be like my biggest advice for this full moon. And I don't want to go too deep into it, but I actually had some things down. Sarah, they said the Canadian Cree culture called this the flying up moon, because little baby birds start to fly this time of year. And here in North America, we call it the sturgeon moon, because Native Americans would fish for the sturgeons in the Great Lakes. So there was all these really fun names. So it's just cool. It's always as deep as you want to make it, but I thought that was neat. But I think it's going to be a great energy.
It feels like when you can kind of clean your slate, right? It's like, okay,
yes, for sure, because that's exactly the energy that, we've come to this, the full moon is now illuminating everything. Sometimes it's things that we don't want to look at.
Yeah.
But if you avoid looking at them, a lot of times they're going to come back and they're going to trip you up at another time. So taking that time to just really, decide that I'm going to look at things that I'm noticing, and I'm going to look at them in a way where I'm not judging them, and really see how you can move through the energy with that. So.
Amazing. Thank you.
It's amazing. Thank you, Station. It's amazing how it leads into the Judgment Diet, because it's a perfect time. Sounds like it's a perfect time to do this Judgment Diet, right? The Judgment Diet that we're going to go into today it goes like this. you're going to set up your timer for 36 hours. And it's easy if you have it on your phone, you have your timer, you set your 36 hours on your phone. And from that moment on, every waking moment, you are going to notice if you go into judgment of anything, anyone, especially yourself. The moment you realize you're judging, you're going to give yourself 10 seconds grace. You're going to switch your thought immediately. If you manage to get it done within 10 seconds and move on from this and completely forget about it, the whole thing is you cannot go back to that judgment again. But if you keep going back, you have to reset your clock to those 36 hours. If you are to succeed in doing your judgment diet in 36 hours, I beg of you, write us.
Yes.
Because you will be the first ever. Because I don't know a single person that has been able to complete the judgment diet in 36 effective hours. We've had plenty of resets. I think my 36 hour lasted 2 months, maybe the first time.
Yeah.
Perhaps even 2 months. And I was very intentional about it. I mean, I worked at it for maybe a month. I don't know. I think it was 2 months. It was so long ago. It was about 15 years ago. But I remember it was long. And every time I had to reset at the very end, I was like, are you kidding me? It's like, I cannot, because you get into this thought pattern. And sometimes it's very challenging to master your mind. It's part of mastering your mind and you being the boss of what you think. Mm-hmm. But we haven't exercised that muscle. We haven't been shown how to do it when we were growing up. Nobody ever told us. Usually we were surrounded by people who love to gossip. Isn't it like the cooler story, like a whole thing in The Office is like where people gather by the water cooler and they just talk garbage about other people. It's like ingrained in us as a civilization. But yes, so reset your clock, your timer to 36 hours every time you stay in a judgment for longer than 10 seconds. Yeah. And seriously, this is between you and yourself.
Yeah.
It is not a competition. It is not, we're not going to measure ourselves with anybody else. It's not about, well, I did it in how many, it takes however long it takes. It takes however long it takes you to be the boss, become the boss of your mind, to create intentionally a different reality for yourself. But I can tell you that we were all changed by that exercise, right? And I had done it several times before I even shared it with you all. And like I said, the first time I did it, it took me 2 months to get through it. Yeah. It was not an easy feat.
I have a question that maybe the audience will have. Do you recommend that those doing it tell people so that it's like, hey, I'm doing this? Or is it like really just keep it to yourself?
Keep it to yourself. When you make a decision, because also you don't want people pointing out.
Yeah.
It's so annoying. Like, I don't like people telling me what to do.
But you know what? I actually did tell my mom, because she is a 24-hour-a-day news watcher. And I said to her, Mom, I'm doing a judgment diet, so I don't want to be making judgments. And she would call me and say, oh, I was going to tell you something, but you're on that judgment diet. And so she would just not say it. So I did tell her that.
So use your judgment.
Use your judgment.
Use your personal judgment. Yeah.
Because that might have helped her too, right? Because
right.
So yeah, that's, but
Well,
there
it
are,
made
you're
her
right, Hannah,
aware.
there could be people you're telling and then they end up pointing it out to you. So yeah, I think you have to be
Right.
careful.
Well, if you, maybe you just share and say, I'm doing this, and enlist their support.
Yes.
Right.
So if you're surrounded by people who do the judgment with you, and you're used to, don't you have that friend that
Yes.
you talk to them, and then the conversation is dish? Like, what if you say, listen, I realized how I came across some information and I realized how damaging it is to dish.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I mean, I really enjoy it. And when we speak, it's like we relish it. I really go into it. But I noticed, or I realized how much it can affect my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in shock because I love dishing. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But I want to try something different.
Yeah.
Would you be open? Because it's going to be hard for us. Because I know I've heard it's like so difficult. Would you be open to joining me in stopping that? And maybe invite them. What could we talk about instead of dishing?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe something brilliant will come out of it. We never know.
No.
Right?
So.
Are you up for the challenge? That's a question.
We know.
So inquiring minds want to know if you're up for the challenge. If you are, put in the comments, I'm in, and set your clocks. And I'm going to give you a moment to set your clocks. Go ahead. 36 hours. And 3, 2, 1, go. Now, when you go to sleep, you're going to pause that, what's it called? Not your timer. You're going to pause your timer when you go to sleep. And when you wake up, now, notice that it's going to be work, right? Because you're going to have to remember to set the timer, to pause the timer, or you can do 12 hours today while you're awake. And then the next day, set it for 12 hours and then set it for 12, however you want to do it, right? But notice that you're going to have to be present, awake, and aware. And who knows what just being in that state or those states is, what kind of transformation it's going to bring into your life. So if you start to have breakthroughs, share with us. We'd love to hear about it and support you in your journey, and cheer you on. And if you want advice, you can write us and we'll do our best to answer you and cheer you on. And we'd love to hear about your breakthroughs and successes as you go through this judgment diet. And we wish you the absolute best and the most magic possible.
So this one comes from Ralph Waldo Emerson, who was born in 1803. I keep going way back.
You keep going back. Yeah, you like,
right?
You're on a
But I saw this and it just caught my attention before I even knew what we were going to talk about. And he said, all I have seen teaches me to trust the Creator for all I have not seen.
I love it.
Right? Because here we are. Here we are.
That's a good one.
And it's so deep, but yet it's just such a simple statement.
But yet simple.
Because we really carry all of this energy with us, and that energy of judgment, and it's shedding what is not serving us, so that we can rise up and literally discover these things that are they're just there waiting for us.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And that is how much is available to us when we go through processes like these.
Yay. Thank you. We have a few different episodes that are coming up that we would love to have your questions. So if you have any questions about, we mentioned Zone of Genius, meditation, relationships, astrology. If you have any specific questions about that, we'll put a post on, follow us on Instagram at ReCoded Podcast. And I'll put everything in the show notes, the links in that. And we'd love for you to either email us or go on to Instagram and send us your questions. And we will be asking, we'll pick one or two to ask. So that we would love that. All right. Well, we will see everybody on the next episode of ReCoded. Bye.
Bye-bye.
ReCoded.